Hey, Sisterhood, it is Kristen here, and I have been looking forward to this conversation for so long, and I know a lot of you have too, because you have asked us regularly how our sister Ellissa is doing. How is she doing? A lot of you know our sister married a Ukrainian, moved to Ukraine last year, and just recently had her baby. But in the midst of all the craziness that's been going on the past month with Russia invading, a lot of you have followed her story closely and have just been so encouraged by her faith in the Lord in the midst of such crazy circumstances. Who knew this was going to happen? So I am so excited to welcome Ellissa to the Girl Defined show, to this video, to chat about what has been going on, how she's doing, and how her faith in God has really been an anchor for her in the midst of so much craziness. Hey, sister.
Hi. Thank you for having me. And I'll just give a disclaimer now. I've got a babe in my arms, and so if you see me rocking back and forth, that's why.
Oh, you can rock all you need. And Ellissa was telling me before we started recording, she's like, okay, I can't guarantee there might not be screams from the baby. I'm like, it's okay. Everybody loves Amelia. We love your baby, and we don't mind hearing our scream. It's fine.
She wants to participate in the conversation.
Yes. Well, it's so good to see your face and to see little Amelia.
Obviously,
this moment that looks so peaceful and calm has not been the reality of your life lately.
It's true.
But before we jump into just you literally escaping Ukraine, fleeing for your life, trying to get to safety, I mean, that whole story is insane. Take us back a little bit before that, because people who may not know your story in detail might be wondering, okay, how did this girl from Texas, which is where you grew up, how did this girl from Texas end up in Ukraine right outside of the capital, Kyiv? How did you even end up there in the first place?
Yes. Yeah. I feel like it's just been such a journey the past, I don't know what, year and a half maybe. So I lived in South Texas, like she said, and just normal girl, going to church, getting older, single, hoping to meet a godly guy at some point. And the Lord brought this amazing godly man from Ukraine to my church in Texas, and we met and started a long distance relationship. And then eventually, through COVID and all the craziness, eventually we got married in 2021, and I moved to Ukraine maybe 20 days after we got married. And, I've lived in Texas my entire life. And so that was just the first crazy thing that happened, was moving to another country and experiencing new culture, along with, being freshly married on top of it all.
That's a lot of change.
It was a lot of change, but obviously so worth it, because he's an awesome guy, and I loved him, and I loved his ministry and what he was doing. So 100% worth it.
Yeah. And you've been trying to learn a new language on top of it all.
I was trying.
Was that a surprise for you? I know people ask us about that too. How is she doing with learning a new language when you got to Ukraine? And it was so sweet. I actually got to go to Ukraine for the trip that you got engaged on. That trip. So that was that was really sweet. How many months before that, from when you got married, was that trip to Ukraine?
I think 4 months.
Oh, it was fast. I didn't realize.
Yeah, it was quick. We just wanted to get married.
I know.
We've been apart long enough.
Yeah. So we went to Ukraine with you guys. There was a small group of us. And then you, obviously, Andre, he lives right outside of Kyiv, the capital. But you drove over. We all drove over to Lviv, which is a beautiful city in Ukraine. And you got engaged there.
Yes.
Which was super sweet.
So magical in a way, because it's such a European feeling city. And we got engaged in a, I don't even know what, town square.
Yes.
And it just felt I don't know, something from a Disney movie. It was so magical. She did such a great job.
And we were all hiding, and Andre was like, do not be visible when I propose. And so, but we wanted to watch, so we were all trying to stay away from the town square, but hoping we'd accidentally maybe peek around a corner.
We're just a townsperson.
Yes, just the local townspeople,
just
right?
Strolling.
Here we go. Something I did find interesting when I was there, though, visiting that first trip with you, was how few people actually spoke English.
Yeah.
You kind of we've both been to other European cities, and a lot of cities, especially big cities, a lot of people can speak English, but I was surprised by how few people could actually speak English, which I know you now moving there, living there, when you first moved there, that was what kind of challenge was that for you?
Yeah, that was a big challenge. There are people that speak English, but not a lot. And so just figuring out like, okay, what are the basic words I need to know to get around? Like, okay, at the grocery store, like, do you want a bag or no bag? Like, okay, I need to know what that means because every
Yes.
time it's awkward and they're asking me, like, I don't know. So learning the basic words, basic phrases. And then, I mean, like in our community, people just kind of knew like, okay, she's the English speaker and we'll just do the best we can with her. This weird one from America. But yeah, it's challenging because it does feel isolating in a way,
Mm.
especially, I'm very relational. I like to talk to people,
Mhm.
build new friendships, and feeling like, wow, I can't be kind of who I really am. Like you feel like you can't, be your true personality when you can't communicate with people.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
trying to find like, okay, creative ways to get around that, and Google Translate helps
Oh,
a lot to
yes.
be able to communicate with people.
I know that from when we adopted our boys from Ukraine,
Yes.
we had the reverse problem, right? Now they're the Ukrainian speaking boys in
Yeah.
America. They're the ones that can't understand the main language, and Google Translate was key in helping all
It's
of
a
us.
lifesaver.
But it's not the same. It's not the same as like being able to
Right.
talk to people. So I remember having conversations with you early on, and that was a big challenge because it was
Hmm.
hard to just build deep relationships. Like
Yeah.
you can't even have a deep spiritual conversation with someone if you can't speak the same
Hmm.
language, much
Hmm.
less like basic things. So
Yeah.
I remember there, like
Yes.
for you, was that a lonely time? Like, how did you,
Hmm.
even like your trust in God, like it's a beautiful,
Hmm.
wonderful transition, but like how did your
Hmm.
relationship with God, do you feel
Yeah.
like even grew during that time when you couldn't have a lot of in-person
Yes.
relationships in that way?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yes. And I remember we definitely had some FaceTime calls about this, especially in the beginning. I'm newly married. I come from this big family, in
Yeah.
Texas and this huge community. I was super involved in my church, my young adults group, small group, all the things. And then to move to this new country. And obviously, I'm so happy to be with my husband and so excited about that. But, you need more than your husband in life. You need
Hmm.
friendships and you need community. And so that was hard, feeling like, wow, I'm new here and not only the new person in town, but I can't communicate with people on a deep level like I would love to, have, deep conversations about how people are doing and spiritual conversations. It just wasn't a possibility. And so I remember feeling very lonely at times, like, wow,
Hmm.
I'm so excited to be with my husband, but I really miss my family and I miss my friends. And I feel, strange not being able to communicate with people and feeling like everyone is kind of always like, oh, feeling sorry for you because you can't talk to them and you just feel
Yes.
so different. And so, yeah, talking to you honestly helped a lot. Having someone that you can kind of share your concerns with and your fears and your loneliness, that helped a ton. And then just taking it to the Lord, like
Mm.
he wasn't surprised. He 100% led me to this marriage, led me
Yeah.
to this country. And so just taking those fears and those concerns to him and just like, Lord, you are my friend in this time. Like you are my father in this time, and help me to find creative ways that I can connect with
Hmm.
people, even if it's, something small or something where I feel like, oh, this is so random. I don't want to do this, but just
Yes.
even small ways. And I feel like God definitely did grow me and sustained me through that time and was probably preparing me for
I
even
know.
more that I didn't know about.
Wow, looking back now, and we'll get to that story in a minute, just thinking of those early challenges, just
Yeah.
I'm sure in some ways they seem so minor compared to like
Mhm.
the challenges that were to come.
Right.
But God really was preparing you. Okay, set the
Mhm.
scene for people who have never been to Ukraine and they don't know what maybe a Ukrainian city or like what the culture would feel like.
Yeah.
What did that feel like for you? One, church life, and then
Mhm.
culture, and then also where you lived. Like describe kind of your home
Right.
life house when you were in Ukraine, obviously, right now. For
Mhm.
those listening, we're having this conversation, and Ellissa is not currently in Ukraine as we
Right.
speak. You are in Hungary.
Yes,
That's a
in
whole
a
nother
very
story.
different place. Yeah.
Yeah, but take us back to
Yes.
Ukraine and what that was like for you early on. Just church life,
Mhm.
culture, and then where you lived, like your
Yeah,
house.
for sure, for sure. So, it's not so different as you would expect. Once you start getting to know people, it's like, okay, people are people no matter where you live, you know?
Yeah.
But things that were different, like we lived in a small village outside of Kyiv. So Kyiv was pretty close, but still small village, and small village in Ukraine means really horrible roads. It's like
Oh
one of the
no.
big things to know about Ukraine is the roads are really bad. It's like,
Oh,
I
no.
don't know, imagine some dirt country road, but way, way worse than that, with massive potholes that you're like trying to avoid when you're driving. So
Yes.
that was the reality of our road right outside our home. But yeah, small village. We would take the metro to go downtown. So take the train, which was really fun, or take a bus to get places, which was different from, living in a big city in Texas where you just drive your car everywhere.
Yeah.
And our church was really sweet. We went to a small church that was connected to the Christian academy that my husband was working with, and really sweet community of believers. But yeah, small church. And, most people don't speak English. There were some. And so I did have a
Yeah.
few people that I could talk to, which was really nice. But the entire service was in Ukrainian. All the songs were in Ukrainian. But they would sing a lot of like Hillsong and in Ukrainian. And so I would like pull up the
Oh,
lyrics in English on my phone and just like sing really quiet.
yes.
So not to be so awkward. Like,
Wow.
what? But
Hey, that's a
everyone
beautiful picture.
understood.
Like
Yeah.
every tribe, nation, and tongue praising the Lord. You had that kind of going
Yes.
in your own little moment there with the
I
various
had it going.
languages.
Yes. But people were super welcoming, super accepting, because it's hard for them too. Like they probably want to reach out and make me feel welcome, but it's hard.
Yeah.
So the women were so welcoming, so accepting. Even if they didn't speak English, they would just smile or try the best they could. We would both
Yes.
try the best we could with the languages we knew. And my husband would translate for me during the service. So, that's the additional challenge for him. Like, okay,
Wow.
here we go. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was church. That was our home. Kyiv is a big city, beautiful big city, very old, lots of beautiful old architecture, a lot of young people. So like a lot of fun coffee shops and restaurants and, people riding scooters, just kind of typical big city.
Yeah. Yeah. I think some people who hear your story probably wonder, like, okay, was it worth it to marry this Ukrainian man and like change
Right.
your entire life, move all the way over there to a culture that's new, people that can't understand you because you don't speak the same
Right.
language, like you left everything behind, everything you were born and raised in San Antonio, your family, your church, like community,
Right.
everything that's normal to you.
Yeah.
So this guy, Andre, must be a pretty special guy, is what people are probably thinking.
Right.
So tell us,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was worth it. I mean, I'll
Right.
let you answer that. But what was so special about him that
Yeah.
just obviously the Lord brought you together? He orchestrated this story. But from your perspective, like,
Right.
tell us about Andre.
Yeah. Oh, how so sweet. I wish he were here to listen. Like, honey.
I'll show him the recording later.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, all the good things I say. Well, I think, I am a Christian. That's no surprise to anyone. So my faith is the most important thing to me. And when I thought about getting married, I thought about, I want a man that's passionate about the Lord. I want to live my life serving him. And if I can't be married to a guy that has that same vision, then I'm better off just being single and serving the Lord as I am. And so I was really waiting for that man that I saw was passionate about the Lord. And something that I always really wanted was somebody that was really passionate about the gospel and sharing the gospel and discipleship and, involved in ministry and just had that heart for the Lord. And I had met great guys along the way, but none that really, gets you super excited. So when I met him, I just felt like, wow, this is a man who is on fire for the Lord. So he played professional football, soccer, and that's what he was doing. He was coaching and doing ministry, incorporating the gospel into his practices. He was doing, international discipleship and trainings and so many things that I just thought, wow.
Yeah.
Like, he's so on fire and he's so excited and there's just such a passion. His life has clearly been changed. And I thought, wow, like that's something I could get on board with. That's something I could really get excited about. And also, I was super attracted to him. Like, he was so good looking. Like this sporty,
let's be honest.
sporty athlete. Like, okay, it's hard to find the full package. And so I'm willing to move. I'm willing to move for that.
Right. Yes. And I remember talking with you early on and like, you're like, it's my mission and my purpose as a Christian. It doesn't change. Like it's the same. And so
Yes.
marrying a man and moving, there are some sacrifices. There are things that obviously
Yeah.
change that you're giving up, but you're also
sure.
gaining, but your mission as a Christian is the same. And you and
Mm-hmm.
Andre
Mm-hmm.
both to this day
Right.
have such a gospel-centered mission of like outreach and ministering and loving people and sharing the gospel with them, that whether you live in Texas or in Ukraine or now in Hungary and you're not sure what the
Yeah.
future holds, it's like your mission still remains the same. And that's
Right.
just like
Totally.
such a beautiful, right, and biblical motivation. And that's, to me, when looking on at your story, I was like, wow, she's willing to move wherever the Lord wants her to move because she has the heart, like the mission, and that's what drives her. So I know that was really encouraging to me. And I know a lot of people that were looking on. Okay, so we have a little bit of the setting. We have a little bit about Andre, where you lived, what life was looking like. Amelia wasn't on the scene yet. We do know that much. But tell us about some of those early months. So you were in Ukraine living in your house in Ukraine for how many months before the Russian invasion actually took place? How long was that time? Was it like a year?
Yeah, good question. So we got married January 2021, and then I moved there. And then we celebrated 1 year anniversary in January, and then February 24th, we had to flee. So
Okay.
yeah, basically, I don't know, basically a
Yeah.
year of living there.
It was basically about a year, and you found
Mm-hmm.
out you were pregnant with Amelia.
Mm-hmm.
Was that about 3 months into your marriage, 4 months?
Yeah, it was pretty soon. Yeah, maybe about 4 or 5 months into our
Okay.
marriage, we found out, and we were so excited. We wanted kids, and neither of
Yeah.
us are spring chickens, so we were ready to start trying.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And now you're holding her. For people who are listening and
I
not
know.
watching, you can go check out this on YouTube to see Ellissa holding baby Amelia. We
See
see
the
her
little
little
hand.
Yes, like the little hand resting on you. That's so
And
sweet.
we're hoping she just doesn't scream.
Yeah. Oh, she's doing amazing. I'm so impressed. Okay, so tell us what life was like during those months when life was pretty normal, but there were rumblings about Russia. Like you had heard some things. People were talking. Obviously, it wasn't like a non-conversation, but what was just like everyday life for you?
Yeah,
prior?
For sure. Yeah. So, even before I moved, I knew that there had always been some sort of like conflict between Ukraine and Russia. But it didn't seem like anything at the moment was super serious. Like, okay, there's been conflict in the past, but things seem pretty settled right now. And as time went on while living there, it became more apparent that Russia had some ideas about invading Ukraine, but we didn't know how serious it was because, there's been this threat for probably as long as Ukraine's been around,
Yeah.
And so you can't live your life in fear. You can't constantly be fleeing your home, It's like, this is where you live. This is your house. So just because there's a threat doesn't mean you're going to flee your home.
Right.
And so they were building up their army around our border, but we didn't know, like, okay, is this just a show of power and they're trying to intimidate us, or is this something more serious? So that was a big conversation as time progressed. Of like, okay, should we stay? Should we leave? We weren't really seriously considering leaving because, like, okay, well, it doesn't seem serious yet. But, talking to our community and hearing what other people were doing and just like, okay, kind of that conversation was on the table. Like, okay, if things got serious, kind of what would our game plan be? What would that look like? And so at some point, probably as it got closer to February, I decided I wanted to pack like a go bag, like an emergency bag, because I was like, you never know what might happen, and I'd rather just be prepared. And so, I don't even remember what I packed, like blankets and matches and things that later on were not helpful at all.
Oh, no.
Like, I needed more socks and underwear, not matches.
Oh, no.
But anyway, yeah, so just
That's
being
interesting.
prepared. So we had emergency bag. We had
Yeah.
some plans in place, but we never seriously thought we would need to leave.
Yeah. And it had been happening, like you're saying, for so many years.
Right.
Obviously, they were placing more and more troops on the border. So, okay,
Right.
people were getting concerned. But I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us, especially in the West looking on,
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to have opinions, right? And there were
Right.
all sorts of opinions I heard flying around here in Texas, just even on
Oh,
the
yeah.
internet, like, oh, people
Mm-hmm.
need to do this. And then it's like, it's
Yes.
easy to have all the strong opinions and
Yes.
like say they should have done this. But when
Yeah.
you're living there, and there has been this kind of constant tension between Russia and
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and it is your home. Like you're living
Right.
in your house. Like imagine
Yeah.
anyone listening or watching, you're in your house. Like this is where your livelihood is, your work, your food, your clothes, everything. You can't just
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
other week pick up and leave. Where you're going to go. You're going to pay
Right.
for an Airbnb. You're going to try to find a friend somewhere to stay with. Like what if
Mm-hmm.
you have like animals and your work? How do you work? How do
Yeah.
you make money? Like I just think people have opinions,
Totally.
but they're not as informed. And you being someone who is
Mm-hmm.
living in it,
Mm-hmm.
you faced that reality every day of like,
Right.
okay, we can't just pick up and leave everything
Right.
behind for like long
Yeah.
periods of time. Like that's
For
just
sure.
not reality for everyday
No.
living. So you
Mm-hmm.
guys were having conversations, but at the
Right.
same time, you didn't feel like you were threatened
Mm-hmm.
in those moments. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
you chose to stay along with pretty
Yeah.
much everyone else in your
Yeah.
community, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone. Nobody in our community was leaving. And we were talking to everybody, getting wisdom, getting all the advice, and nobody was leaving. And the other thing is we were in Kyiv. We're in the capital of this
Yeah.
country. Like when has a capital in this day and age ever just been directly attacked? Like that's just unheard of. It's like Washington D.C. like being attacked. Like
Yeah.
you would never think like, oh, maybe there's skirmishes other places, but not your capital.
Right.
So we felt like, okay, we feel very safe
Mhm.
in the center capital of Ukraine. We just didn't feel concerned at that point.
Yeah. And I know even talking to Andre, because you guys came back during that time for a visit to the
Mm-hmm.
States. I remember
Yeah.
having conversations like, oh, like, how do you guys feel about this? And what are you thinking about that? And I
Mm-hmm.
remember Andre was saying, our concern isn't so much for Kyiv, but
Right.
it is for more the eastern and southern
Yeah.
portions of Ukraine. I think there
Right.
was kind of, it sounded like a consensus amongst a lot of Ukrainians that if
Mm-hmm.
Russia invaded, it wouldn't necessarily be a
Yeah.
full-on invasion, but
Right.
maybe more of the southeastern regions of Ukraine.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
even that was also something to be considered where you
Mm-hmm.
lived. You were feeling like,
Right.
okay, this is probably the last place that we need to
Yeah.
be concerned
Oh,
about.
for sure. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
The other piece of this story, which is just like God's timing on things, sometimes we go, what? Is that you were pregnant. And as it's getting closer to Amelia's due date,
Yeah.
little did you guys know that that was actually getting closer to when Russia was going to
Mhm.
launch a
Mhm.
full-on invasion of
Yes.
Ukraine. So walk us through
Yeah.
kind of maybe a few weeks before that. You're probably about
Mhm.
8 months pregnant at this
Mhm.
point.
Mhm.
And what were you thinking? What were you guys doing? What did life look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was super pregnant and preparing to have our baby,
Yeah.
So we were going to our appointments in downtown Kyiv, meeting with our doctor, planning for our birth. We were setting up our nursery and we had bought her little bed and all of her little things. Our friends did a little baby shower for us while we were there. The women from the church did a little baby shower for me. So for me, it's just, I was living my life as I had always lived it.
Mhm.
And my husband was doing ministry and doing soccer, and we were just living our normal lives. And we knew as it got closer, so we knew that there were more action started to happen in the east, southeast.
Yeah.
And so that was like, okay, now we're a little bit more high alert, but still like we're in Kyiv, nothing's going to happen here. So we just planned on staying and giving birth. But little did we know that wasn't God's plan for us.
Yeah. And I remember you were telling us even the hospitals were saying, even if Russia
Yeah.
invades, like we will still be functioning.
Yes.
We will be here for you. No need to worry. You can
Yeah.
have your baby. I mean, weren't they
Yeah.
giving you reassurances?
Our doctor, like, oh, it's just politics. Don't worry about it. There's no problem. The hospital, even if something happened, the hospital will continue to work. And so we're thinking like, well, I mean, it's our doctor is saying
Right.
this, so probably this is sound advice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
so like people looking on detached from the real everyday life.
Right.
Like that was how a lot of people were thinking and feeling about it, the political perspective. And, it's not you're like, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine was kind of like the vibe. So yeah, I think a lot of people were a little bit caught off guard by what happened. So take us forward a little bit to the moment when you first realized that Russia was actually launching a full-on invasion?
Yeah. So that's like the key word is like full on attack.
Yeah.
Like we said, no idea that that was going to happen. I mean, we saw the troops and we understood that, but we just thought like this is we're living in a modern day and age. Like another country doesn't just do a full on attack of another country. Like that's
Right.
crazy. So, it was the morning of February 24th. And we, the night before, we went to bed like normal. And that next morning, I woke up at like 5 a.m. and noticed that my husband wasn't in bed next to me, which is odd. We don't normally wake up that early. And so I'm laying there like, oh, maybe he just went to the bathroom, but he wasn't coming back. And so I was thinking like, that's strange. What's going on? And then I heard like a really loud noise. And I thought like, okay, what was that? Like, that's really strange. But we live next to a place where there are like some construction trucks. And so I thought like, okay, maybe that was them. But my heart's like starting to pound and I'm thinking like, this is scary. Like, what's going on? And then as I'm laying there, I hear another really loud, like clear explosion bomb going off somewhere.
Wow.
And, I had seen like some sort of streak of fire or something passing my window. And I was just terrified, like so terrified. I mean, just to be honest, like we as Christians, it's like, oh, we've the strong faith. It's like, I was so terrified. I had no idea what was going on. And it was just so scary. So here I am, like almost 9 months pregnant, hearing this huge explosion near my home. I run downstairs and I'm like, asking my husband, like, what's going on? And I hear like more explosions. And it's like just the most terrifying thing you can imagine.
Yes.
It's just so scary. I felt so sick. I thought I was going to throw up. And so
did you know
what's
at that
going
moment?
on?
Oh yeah, you're asking him. Okay.
Yeah, but I knew because like, this had been the talk for however long.
Right.
So I knew like, oh my goodness, how is this happening in Kyiv? This is unbelievable. And so I'm asking him like, what's happening? And he was like, watching the news, and he let me know like they have launched a full attack on all of Ukraine. And so they had strategically, I guess it was drones or something, I don't know, they had sent bombs to all of the major cities around Ukraine, which is terrifying,
Yes.
And so he's watching the news and we're trying to figure out what to do. And so I'm like grabbing the emergency bag, like, okay, I'm getting out of here. I'm so scared. This is terrifying. Like, are there going to be troops at my door? Like, right. Are we going to be like shot? Like, what's going to happen? You don't know. And it's dark and it's scary. So he's like, okay, why don't you go get your emergency bag and like, why don't you go pack some more things and like try and be calm? And so he calls his parents who are in another city and like, hey, y'all should come to us because this is probably safer than where you are, because they were on the east. So he told them to, like get a train here as fast as you can. And so I'm packing the bag, he's calling them, but we were still waiting, to try and figure out like, okay, what actually is happening. We didn't want to just like rush out the door without full information. So he was, talking to people, calling people, watching the news as the morning went on, trying to figure out like, okay, what's actually happening in our city, in our country.
So you're trying to get information, and Andre, who was he getting information from? How was he finding out? Was he watching the news? Like, how did he know what was happening?
Yeah. So he's watching the news. He's calling other people, talking to other people. And I guess they were saying, yeah, it's this kind of attack on all of the major cities, and which is terrifying. It's just so terrifying to think like, wow, your capital city is under attack and you don't know what's going to happen.
You literally,
it's so scary.
You have no idea. Are you going to leave your house? Are there going to be like military tanks rolling down the streets outside of your village? Like, will we even make it out alive? Like at this point in time, it's like you're safe now. But in that moment, you really had no idea if you were even going to make it out alive or what the journey, the process was going to look like. So you guys did end up leaving, but you didn't go together.
Right. Yeah. So his mom decided she was going to come to us. She was coming from the east. She was going to take a train. His dad decided to stay with their apartment, and she would come to us. And so I was just so scared, to be honest. I was very terrified. You know, I'm pregnant. I'm thinking like, I'm terrified here. Like, this is so, so scary for me. And you know, my husband is much more calm and like, okay, let's think this through. Let's figure out what's going on before we just rush off. And so it's kind of all happening at the same time. He's thinking like, okay, we need to wait until, you know, my mom gets here so that we can at least make sure she gets to us, and then we can kind of regroup from there. But she wasn't going to get there until that evening. And I'm thinking like, I just can't stay here. I'm just so scared. And so, but he was like, okay, let's just wait. Let's just see what's going to happen. Wait till my mom gets here. And so at some moment during that morning, one of my friends called me who lived in my neighborhood. So like my neighbor / friend. And she called me and said, hey, I'm leaving with my kids and my husband, and we're taking 2 cars and we're going to Western Ukraine. We have an extra seat, but like, you have to come now. Like,
wow.
I'm going to be driving by your house in the next minute, and either jump in or don't. So like, you can decide. And so I'm talking to Andrew, like, what do you think? What should I go? Should I not? And he just 100% left it up to me. Like, if you would feel safer going with them right now to the West, then 100% go. Wow. I'll wait for mom. And so I grabbed my emergency bag that I had packed, and I grabbed my hospital bags, and I literally just jumped in her car, and we just took off, started driving as quickly as we could to Western Ukraine.
And in the car, it was the mom, your friend, who's Ukrainian, but speaks really good English.
Yeah.
And was it her 3 daughters?
Yes. So we had 2 cars, her husband and their 3 daughters and me. And we're just booking it. But, you know, so many people, obviously, were also wanting to leave at that exact same moment. So there was tons of traffic. The gas stations were, you know, you couldn't even go. There were such huge lines. Wow. They were running out of gas. And then they were putting up military checkpoints as well. And so you had to go through those. And it's just scary because you're driving through these other cities that have also been attacked. And you don't know, like, okay, when are we going to run into something? Is there maybe some attack they don't know about and we're going to run into it? So it was scary. You know, we're praying the whole way. Like, wow, this is scary. We don't know what's going to happen.
I cannot imagine. That is so terrifying. So Andre, so now here you are, basically 9 months pregnant. I mean, you were just shy of 9 months. Yeah. Andre stays home to help his mom get to safety, to get her settled, and he's planning to meet up with you at some point. But you're heading off to Western Ukraine. Like, you don't even know exactly where you're going. Right. So this drive, I mean, how long were you in the car, and where were you guys headed? Did they even know at that point where they were trying to go?
Yeah. So they were hoping to go to, I think the original plan was to go to Lviv. That was one city at the time that hadn't been attacked. So that was the plan. But it just ended up being just a wild, crazy ride. So we tried going to one place, then we tried crossing, decided, okay, let's cross the border. So then we decided we were going to try and cross the border, but that didn't work because the lines were not moving and they were miles and miles and miles of cars.
And was that trying to cross the border into Poland? Was that the first attempt? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So then we're like, okay, that's not going to work. And so then we're like, okay, let's drive south into the mountains, and we'll go into the mountains and we'll stay there. And so it just was wild. So from the time we left that morning until the next day in the morning, we finally got to these people's house that we were going to stay with. And I think I was in the car for like 19 hours. So pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
You know, it just was so crazy. And I know that 100% God gave me the energy and the strength, because that's really hard to be that pregnant, sitting in a car for that long with few bathroom breaks and like high levels of stress, and like not a lot of food because you got to keep driving. And so I just know, like, wow, there's no way I could have done that unless the Lord was strengthening me supernaturally, because it's just crazy.
It's like, I do not wish that upon anyone. We were following your story throughout this process, obviously trying to communicate with you, pray for you, like, as much as we could. And I just cannot even imagine. And you're separated from your husband. Yeah. So on top of all of it, you don't even know, like, okay, is he okay? Is he going to be okay? How are we going to reunite? So what did that look like for you and Andre to actually get back together?
Yeah. So it's so crazy. So I was in the mountains, like I said. And he waited for his mom to get to our home. She stayed with our dog. And he started driving to come meet me so we could be together wherever, we ended up. So he started driving, and I remember people texting us asking about the gas, like, how do y'all have enough gas? Like, you keep driving places, but how? And, I don't know. I feel like maybe it was a small miracle from the Lord that we never ran out of gas. But we were able to have like fuel the entire time, which was crazy. And we did have extra gas, but yeah, I don't know. I feel like the Lord
Yeah.
just sustained us in that.
It's like he
So
multiplied your portions,
Yes, exactly. So like I was saying, I was super worried because I didn't know as the day and the hours were progressing if things were going to get more dangerous on the roads. Because you just don't know. There's so much uncertainty when things are unfolding that quickly. So I was just praying like crazy that God would protect him and that we would be able to get together, because I was super worried. Like, here I am, so pregnant, and I don't want my husband getting captured or shot or something.
Did y'all have, really quick, did y'all have phone communication, like texting and calling during this time, or not so much?
Yes. Yeah, we did. But I think my phone was like dying the whole time, or it died at some point or something.
Yes.
Everything, it always happens that way. Like, of course you don't remember to bring a charger, and you don't have one. But yeah, we were able to communicate. So he started driving, but it's super far. The mountains from where we lived to the mountains is a super far drive. So he started driving. He was able to stop at a friend's house and get a little bit of rest there. And then he headed my way. And finally, we were able to meet up in a really small village at like a friend of a friend's grandmother's house. And just that whole story is just crazy. The connection we had with this family. And then we were able to, find safe shelter in this tiny village at this grandmother's house. And it was just so amazing to finally be back together. You have all that like worry and just fear, hoping everything's going to be okay. Yes. And then to finally be reunited was just so, so special.
How did you first see him when you reunited? Because it had been a couple days, right? By this point.
Yes. A couple
From
days,
the time you
not
left.
A lot of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so the friends dropped me off at this sweet grandma's house. And they had different plans. So they were like, okay, we'll drop you off there. We've got our own plans. So they left. And then I guess later that night he ended up coming. And it was just so special. Like, oh, my husband, you're alive. And God protected you on this long journey to me. So it was so special to be back together. And I don't know. I'm so thankful for these sweet grandmothers. They just took us in. They didn't even know us, complete strangers. They took us in, they fed us, they took care of us like we were their own children. It was just so precious.
Wow. And were you guys still in the mountains at this point? I can't remember. Or were you in a different region?
Yes, we were, kind of in that same region, a really, really safe area.
Okay. And then the next part of the journey begins. So you reunite, but we reunite. It's still not safe. Like you're starting to realize, right? Like, anywhere in Ukraine isn't really that safe, as you're hearing the news and reports of continued bombings around all of Ukraine. And so what were you guys thinking now as a couple? Like, what kind of conversations did you have?
Yeah, it was hard. So I felt very strongly that I wanted to leave, which makes sense because I'm not from Ukraine, technically. I'm not Ukrainian. And I wanted to be in a place that I felt really safe. And obviously Audrey, being Ukrainian, didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay and, be with his people and his country. But he also wanted to make sure I was really safe and our baby was really safe. That's like his first priority, obviously.
Yes, because at this point, you could have your baby any day. Like, you were far enough along. You were how far out from your due date at this point in time?
Oh, man. I think I was mid 38 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So at any point.
Yeah, at any day. Yeah, any moment.
You don't know if like the stress is going to push you into labor.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which is, So yeah, both of us, our first thought was like, okay, we need to make sure our baby's safe. If it was just us, that's one thing. But now we've got this child and I need to be in a safe place. It's not great for labor if you're feeling super stressed and unsafe. So we had to have some hard conversations and figure out like, okay, what do we want to do? What can we do? What are our options? And so of course these sweet grandmas were like, you can stay with us and you can give birth here in this little village.
Aww.
But you don't know how things are going to progress and you don't want to be in labor or delivering in a place that could be, getting bombed or whatever. So we made kind of the hard decision to leave Ukraine, which was difficult for both of us because this is our home. This is everything we've, built in our marriage, like our whole married life. We've lived together in Ukraine, and we have our house and our dog and his parents. And his parents had decided they did not want to leave kind of no matter what. So they were for sure staying. So they were like, we'll stay with your house and your dog. And so we're like, okay, well, I guess that's taken care of.
Wow.
And so we made the hard decision to leave and pretty much just packed our bags and started driving that night. And
packing your bags.
Decision.
Packing your bags means like the few things that you were able to grab on the way
that
out.
We had. Yes.
Was Andre able to bring anything else?
Bags.
Yeah. Was he able to bring anything else for you since he came a little bit after you? Or
yes.
Did you still have like
thankfully.
The one pair of underwear?
Thankfully. No, I know, right? Inside out. No. Yeah, so we didn't communicate about that though. I don't know, maybe had told him like, I have nothing.
Yeah.
So he was super sweet and brought me a bunch of stuff, but I hadn't communicated with him what I wanted. So he brought me what he thought I needed, which is always just so funny. But yeah, he did bring me extra essentials because the things I had in our go bag were not helpful at all. Like buckwheat and matches and, head flashlights. Like this is not what I need in this moment, but I would be prepared if I were stranded on the side of the road.
You never know.
Yeah, you never know.
Better than having nothing.
We grab our bags. We head in, we put our bags in the car and we start heading out. And, it was a really hard moment because the friend that we were staying with, she felt really strongly about us not leaving.
Oh,
and
wow.
so that was just it was already a really hard decision for us to leave. And then this sweet friend, started crying and just felt very strong about us not going. She felt like it wasn't going to be safe and I was pregnant. And so I just remember as we were driving away, I just started crying because it was just such a hard moment of like, wow. I don't know what to do. And I feel so torn, but I feel like this is the right decision. So we kind of got through that first moment and we head out, and it's just, I don't know, it's just scary driving in that circumstances. Everyone's got their lights off in their homes. It's super dark everywhere. There's not a lot of people on the road. Obviously, there's no planes flying. It's just, I don't know, kind of eerie feeling.
Wow.
And so we start heading towards the border, and we've got to go through some mountainous regions and a lot of military checkpoints. Which is just, I don't know, it's just a scary experience. And so we drive all through the night. So wait,
quick question. Yeah. Were these Russian military checkpoints or Ukrainian checkpoints?
These are Ukrainian
checkpoints. And what were they? Yeah. Were they checkpoints that were quickly set up because of the invasion? Or were these just normal checkpoints you always have to go through?
No. So they'd just be like in the middle of the road, like in the middle of a highway or a road.
Wow.
They would have all these barricades and all of these military people with guns, and they would need to check your passports and ask where you're going and what you're doing, which makes sense because they want to make sure that there aren't, I don't know, enemy people traveling back and forth. But it's just scary, just the whole feeling is like, wow, I've never experienced anything like this in my life.
Wow.
So we head out on the road and we're driving all through the night, all through the next morning. And then, just so many miracles, the way God worked, the way he provided for us and led us and brought people into our life at just the exact right moment to help us, with things we weren't certain about, crossing the border and where to stay and what to do and how to do it. He just, I don't know, we just feel like he brought us his angels and guided us exactly where he wanted us. And so that next day, by God's miracle, we were able to cross the border and get into safety. But it was really, really hard. And even as we were crossing the border and we're sitting there in the car, I just remember really just crying and feeling so just broken in that moment. Like not like my heart was breaking. Like I'm leaving this country that I love and, everything that we had prepared for our baby in our home, our little nursery and, all the little things that you had prepared so thoughtfully for her, and you just have to leave it all behind. And it's so hard. It's such a hard decision to make. And you don't know, like, am I making the right decision? Am I not? But it's in those moments, it's like you can only do the best that you can with the knowledge that you have. And you just have to trust that okay, we're making the wisest decision we can, and we're following God's leading as best we can.
Yeah.
But you can still be doing all of that with like uncertainty and
For
fear.
sure.
So
for sure.
it was really, really tough, but finally getting to a place of safety was huge for us.
So tell me about that moment right after you crossed the border from Ukraine into Hungary. I remember you told, when you shared your story for the first time with our family, you had some big kind of unexpected emotions that you were feeling. What were you feeling?
Yeah, it was such a feeling of like, I'm leaving everything behind. And that was so hard because, like I said, it was a really hard decision.
Yeah.
We were so torn to know what to do. And just knowing like, I am leaving all of this, my home, my in-laws, our puppy, you know, so many things that just like all those little things and the big things, and not knowing like when will I ever come back to this? And now my baby won't be born in Ukraine, which was something, you know, obviously we were really excited about. She's half Ukrainian. So for her to have that heritage, and now to know none of that's going to be happening, all of our plans, all of our, you know, the things we were dreaming about, that is going to look completely different. And now we're in this, you know, foreign country that we don't know anything about. But at the same time, there was this piece of knowing, okay, this is the best decision that we had to make for our family. So it was just so tough on all angles.
I cannot even imagine. And there's also the uncertainty of, will we ever be able to go back? What is our country? What is the country we know, and our house, our city, our village? Like, as we know it, what is going to be left? Like, there's so much uncertainty of the future, and will we ever go back? Like, will life ever be the same as we've known it? So you guys cross the border into Hungary, and you head to Budapest. Right? And that is kind of became your landing spot. You're still there. Right. So what has life looked like? Well, tell us about the birth really quick. That's a crazy thing. I know any woman who's had a baby is probably thinking, talk about your birth plan being thrown upside down. Like, you had researched, you had visited, you were ready in Ukraine, and talk about like, you're about to have a baby and you don't even know. Now you're in a new country. You don't speak Hungarian. Neither does Andre. Right. It's a new language to deal with, new hospitals, new healthcare system. Like, how in the world did you find a place to have your baby? And what did that look like?
Yes. I mean, it's so crazy. It's immediately you have so many decisions you have to make.
Yes.
And you have so little time because the baby could come at any point. So we got settled into Budapest, and then immediately started researching, looking into hospitals, looking into, you know, options and midwives and doctors and everything. But it is overwhelming, and kind of our dream birth. We really wanted to have a natural birth, and it was interesting because the C-section rate actually in Hungary is really, really high, and that's wonderful if you want that, or you need that for an emergency or whatever. But if that's not what you want and you want to go a natural route, it was really difficult and kind of scary too, as we're visiting these hospitals and they're sharing with us like, oh, our C-section rate is 90%. And we're thinking like, oh man, that doesn't leave us a lot of options, or like a lot of chances to have the natural birth we want. So that alone was really tough. So just like, oh man, going from hospital to hospital, talking to all the doctors. But then finally, you know, people were so sweet. I've just got to say, people on social media were so kind to give us, hey, I'm from Budapest. Here's some advice on hospitals or doctors. I used this midwife and I really had a great experience. So that was super helpful. So somebody mentioned a hospital and said, hey, I gave birth at this hospital, and it was a really wonderful natural experience. And so we ended up visiting and just fell in love with it. We found a wonderful midwife that spoke English, and she was super supportive. And the craziest thing, so we talked to the doctors, and we were actually the first Ukrainian refugees that were coming to this hospital after this whole war situation. And so they were so kind and said that they wanted to give us this entire experience for free, which was my goodness. Kind, like kind of as refugee status. So that was just like That's another amazing. Blessing, another miracle. Yes. Just one more thing we didn't have to worry about, which was such a humongous blessing. So we found the hospital we wanted. We found the midwife we wanted. And honestly, I feel like God just blessed us so much with a really easy labor, really easy delivery. I mean, as easy as birth can be. But relatively speaking, for all the stress that I had and all that I went through, I feel like my body could have done so many different things.
No
But
kidding.
it was super fast, super easy, no problems with baby, no problems with me. Massive blessing. I didn't know for her too, like, is she going to have some sort of problem because of all the stress? But
yes,
super healthy baby.
Wow.
And just wonderful, awesome experience overall. So thankful.
Huge answer to prayer. Such an unknown.
Huge.
So you guys are still in Budapest and things in Ukraine are still very uncertain, although there has been some change for the positive, but also some for the negative. It's kind of still not a great situation for going back. And so what does the future look like for you guys at this point? I know you're just kind of waiting and trying to figure things out as you go to some degree, but...
Yes. Yeah. So our future is uncertain, to say the least. We would love to go back to our home. Obviously, we want to see his parents. We want to see our puppy. We want to go to our home. We want to take Amelia to kind of her homeland. But it's just too dangerous right now. There's still an ongoing war. There are still fights happening, bombs being dropped. And so it's very dangerous. So it's not a place we want to take a baby by any means. So we are here for now. Andre, of course, as the amazing man he is not able to sit still, but has just jumped right in to doing ministry here, helping refugees, going to the border, taking people. And just today, I don't know, just what a sweet guy. You don't know how crisis might affect your marriage or might affect you as individuals. But I feel like it's just brought out even more in him that I love. So even today, he was like, I'm going to go. I need to go pick up some milk at the store to bring to this refugee family that has a baby and they need some milk for their baby. And I'm thinking, wow, my husband's so sweet. So yes, he's jumped into kind of whatever ministry and service he can do here in Budapest. But yeah, for the time being, we're here. We might go back to the States and be able to visit family. But yeah, we're here trying to be faithful to serve the Lord in any way we can, praying daily that God will stop the evil that is happening in Ukraine and allow the good and the right to win so we can go back and our people can have some freedom.
Yeah. One of the things that we actually write about, so in our book, Not Part of the Plan, which you know about, and your whole life, we can just do part 2 and it can just be about your life. Not part of the plan, trusting God with the twists and turns of your story. But it's interesting because in our book, we actually talk about your story. We talk about the different paths that God has for each of us and how often the path as it unfolds of our life is so different than what we imagined. And that was just when we were writing about how you met this Ukrainian and married him and moved overseas. And at that point, that was the twist and turn that nobody really saw coming. And now there's like an entire new layer, new element on top of that that's still being, it's a journey that you're still on. So how has your trust in God been an anchor for you throughout this whole process?
Yeah, for sure. I can't imagine going through this without having faith in the Lord. I just can't even imagine that because we know that no matter what happens, God is with us. He's leading us. He's guiding us. And even if the worst happened, say we were tortured or we were killed or something terrible happened, our ultimate hope is not in our country, our home, our whatever. Our ultimate hope is in Christ. And we know that no matter what happens, even if we were to die, that we would be with him. And obviously we're not hoping to be tortured or to die, but we know that ultimately he is in control and that in the end, evil is not going to win. And that we know the end of the story, that Christ is victorious. And it may seem hopeless now, and it may seem like, wow, there's so much evil that is happening. But we know that the ultimate victory is with the Lord if you have your hope and your trust in him. And so just knowing that, seeing the way that God worked so many small and big miracles through this whole journey, it just brought so much peace to our heart. Like, wow, we are not alone in this. Even as we're escaping and it's scary and we feel maybe alone on the road and it's dark, we know that he's still with us and he has not abandoned us. He hasn't forgotten us. And so it does give me hope for the future, knowing that he's been with us this far and he's not going to leave us anytime soon.
Wow, such a powerful testimony. It's easy to talk the talk, but when our life brings us trials that are really hard and there is so much uncertainty, everything we thought we had control of, we now know clearly we don't. We never had control, but it becomes very obvious, especially something like your situation. And I've heard from so many people through Girl Defined, just friends, direct friends in my community, in my church, just saying, wow, what a testimony, watching your and Andre's story as you guys were very open about the trials and the struggles. I know you were sharing some video updates kind of throughout the process. And I've just heard from so many people, and I'm sure there are so many more that I haven't heard from. And this even includes unbelievers. So people who do not profess faith in Christ, but who have looked on as they've heard about your story through different news outlets. I know you guys were kind of hot in the news there for a little bit because it's just such a crazy story. This Texas girl marries Ukrainian, 9 months pregnant, trying to flee, and just the testimony for the gospel, which is just so awesome to see how many even unbelievers were able to look on at your story, see your faith, see your hope in God in the midst of so much chaos, a situation that would, cause anyone to lose their mind in the sense of just like filled with anxiety, filled with fear. And there were for sure scary times, but your ultimate faith and hope is in the Lord. And so therefore it's like death, which is the worst thing that could happen, in a sense, like that wasn't your greatest fear. Like you guys were just such great testimonies of trusting the Lord with whatever outcome. So I'm thankful, and my faith has been encouraged by your story. And I know anyone listening right now who maybe didn't know a lot of your story is really encouraged. So in closing, I will let you go, get to your sweet baby who I know wants you. How can people pray for you guys?
Such a great question. So like I said, our future is uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. We are strangers in a strange land. We are not in our home. We would love to be in our home. We would love to continue ministering to our Ukrainian people in Ukraine. So just wisdom, I think, is the biggest thing. Wisdom to know what to do as things unfold. We really want to be wise. We don't want to just rush into something or rush back because we just want to be home, but we really want to make the wisest choice. And so whether that's staying here, whether God wants us to go somewhere else, we're not sure. So just to have wisdom as things unfold, to know what's the best decision to make for our family. And then I think on more of a personal note for me, just the adjustment to being a new mom. It's been tough, as anyone knows, lots of sleepless nights, and the adjustment to having a small human on you 24/7 and how that changes your relationship with your husband and just who you are as a person. It feels like you're kind of evolving and changing. So just that I would be faithful in this season, knowing it's just a season and not anxious for something else or trying to kind of escape it, but just really embrace this season for what it is and enjoy every small moment, every sleepless night. And just that my heart would be in the right place during this new season of motherhood.
That's so good. Where can people connect with you? If they want to follow along from now on, where can they find you on Instagram?
So my Instagram is Mrs. Ellissa Petrenko. And that's spelling is weird. So MRSELLISSAPETRENKO.
Nice. And we'll include this in the show notes in the description so people can find it. Wow, this has been so encouraging. Thank you for taking time to share with all of us. I loved getting to hear your story from kind of beginning to end. I know there were so many more details you weren't able to share, so many questions I wanted to ask, but I was like, for the sake of time, I'm going to have to skip it. But that was so good, so encouraging, so hope-filled, just finding our hope and trust in the Lord. And if you're listening to Ellissa's story right now and you are going through something hard in your life, something unexpected, a twist and turn, maybe not fleeing a country for your life, but something hard, a breakup or a chronic illness that you're struggling with, not getting into the college you wanted, struggles in your marriage, or maybe you're longing for marriage and you're single, or infertility. So many things can happen in life that don't go according to our plan. I really want to encourage you to consider grabbing a copy of Not Part of the Plan, trusting God with the twists and turns of your story, because this book is one written out of my own journey of infertility for 10 years, learning to trust God, Bethany's journey of singleness, like I said, Elissa's story, the beginning of her story we share about in this book as well. And I know it will be such a huge encouragement for you as you are longing to have a deeper trust in the Lord. You hear Elissa's story and think, I want that kind of faith. I want that kind of trust. God wants you to have that as well. And as we learn from his word, which we unpack so much scripture in this book, not part of the plan, I know it will bring so much hope and encouragement to you in your journey. And you can find it at girldefined.com/trust. Ellissa, thank you so much. We'll definitely have to do a part 2 as your story continues to unfold. And I know you might be making a trip to the States with your little sweet baby here soon. I hope so. I'm dying to meet her in person. But I love you so much. Thanks for coming on.
Thank y'all for having me. It was so special to share. I think this was the first time I've actually really shared my story. So it was so special. Thank y'all for having me.
I feel so honored. What do they call that when you get like an exclusive interview?
Oh. Only
I feel
for
like
my family.
Only for your sister. Yes. Okay. Well, love you so much. And we are all praying for you guys.
Thanks. Bye.